Hello, good afternoon everyone. Welcome to the Procura Plus webinar on SPP monitoring. First of all, just a big thank you for everyone attending this afternoon for the event and supporting the Procura Plus network and our webinars. So a very exciting time for the network actually. We are right in relaunching the Procura Plus network and a series of activities around that. And all of this is happening in the backdrop of 20 years of SPP, exactly. So plenty of things to keep an eye out for in terms of events and activities and other promotions that we'll be bringing you in the upcoming. Some of those include the recently relaunched Procura Plus website. You can see that at www.procuraplus.org if you haven't seen it already. And some of the activities around that for Procura Plus includes the increased networking, such as interest groups and twinning activities. Again, you can find details of all of these things on the website. We'll be shortly announcing details of the upcoming Procura Plus Awards 2016. So again, keep your eyes peeled for that. We have a great panel of presenters, all who have experience of the topic, whether it's implementing it or working on it, studying it. So we've got a good expert panel, which includes Elm from Flanders, Patricia from Rome, of Eco Institute, and we have also Robert Kaukovic from the European Commission, who will give an introductory topic. We will have some time at the end for questions. So go along. If anybody has any questions they would like to ask, you can send them to me using the chat function, which you'll see at the side of your screen. So if you want me the question in writing, then I will ask the questions at the end of the talks. We're 15 minutes at the end for that. So, without any further ado, I am going to pass you across to our first speaker, Robert, and he will give you a little bit of an overview of the state of the art of monitoring right now. So, Robert, I'm going to unmute you.
Thank you much, John, and good afternoon, everyone. So, to introduce myself very briefly, I'm working as a Green Public Procurement Policy Officer in DG Environment for more than 5 years now, and the subject of monitoring of GPP has followed me since my first day here. It's a very important issue, but it's also a very complicated issue, and I must admit we are not there where I hope we would be in 2011 when it comes to knowing how much monitoring is actually, how much green public procurement is actually being done all over Europe. All started with the 2008 communication, Public Procurement for a Better Environment, where the Commission set a target that for the year 2010 already all 50% of the tender procedures should be green for the priority product groups for which we have developed our GPP area. 2 times the Commission conducted surveys to find out if we are in line with the 50% target in 2009 regarding only 7 member states, the most advanced member states, and concluded that the 50% target has been reached in number of contracts and in value of contracts. And we did it again in 2011, like then 27 member states, concluded that we are not achieving the overall target of 50%. We were at about 26%. But surveys have left us with a thing of we don't know really if these are very reliable results because surveys cannot oblige anyone to participate in the survey. So we had some countries at least a rather low response rate, and for others we had better. But I have the suspicion that you are more likely to participate in such a survey if you have something to show that you're doing green procurement than if you're not interested in the subject at all. So we have the feeling that the royalties of green public procurement are probably a bit lower even than what we had found out in the 2011 studies. With in mind, we realized that the surveys are probably not the way to go. And in the 2013 7th Environmental Action Program, it was that we want to develop a more, at least propose the scope for periodic monitoring of member states' program on the basis of adequate member state data, while having regard for the need to minimize the level of administrative. So we would like to shift the burden to the member states, because that's where the data can be collected more easily. But it's a difficult task. Some member states have started doing it, and we will see some of the examples today later on. We have developed now is a draft document. I just put it today on the procurement forum. There's a group on monitoring, so if anyone is interested in commenting on this, please go. You have to be accepted for this group, but I'm leader of the group. I will accept you without further problems. And we have made a proposal which we discussed with a couple of you already with the Green Public Procurement Advisory Group, where the states are represented in a couple of stakeholders. You could do at the member state level on a voluntary basis green public procurement monitoring, would that be comparable between the different member states, so that we have a overall picture of what's going on in Europe. We hope that significant number of member states we don't have a final version yet. It's on a voluntary basis, so that some member states will not be part of it. There is, however, an obligation from the new public procurement directives. It's in Article 8.3, with a point to which that the European Commission can request the member states to provide information on the practical implementation of national strategic procurement policies, but not more often than every 3 years. So this should also help states to do their reporting under this article. So we asked the member states to integrate these recommendations somehow in their own monitoring, ideally to be done via e-procurement. All the member states are about to work on this, and e-procurement will be set up, I think, by 2018 at the latest. Public can still continue with surveys, but I have my doubts if they get too much information out. We have and proposed to look at a couple of product groups, not at all the product groups that we have developed at the Commission side, which are about 20. I think that would be overburden. So we might like to cut it down to about 10 or 12 product groups, the most important ones like IT equipment, transport, construction, food and catering, IT equipment, and so on and so forth. An indicator would remain, as was said before in our communication 2008, 8% of the contracts to green, and those that we are making there are pretty much inspired of what Flanders has done, and that we will hear later on from Els, so that you are referring to specific to technical specifications which must be included in the process, so that you know that this contract really had to fulfill some criteria. Not to say, did you include anything on green criteria, which could also be just criteria which might not end up really altering the final contract in a way. I'd like to combine that with the SPP code, so that you know if a public authority is buying something which is relevant for greening, then ask specific questions about greenness of this So if you're buying IT equipment, that there will be questions coming up on energy efficiency, or for buildings, on the buildings materials, and so on and so forth. We have proposed some questions, would be asked, but that's really pretty much up for discussion. The difficulty is that although they developed the EU GPP criteria, they are voluntary for use and they are taken up by a lot of public authorities the way that we post them, but others are using other criteria, others are ignoring our criteria entirely. Some of them are twisting them to some extent. So the question, do you comply with the EU GPP criteria, would not really encompass all the green procurement being done all over. That makes it so complicated. I heard from countries it's already difficult to ask that at a national level because the criteria from the national action plans are not necessarily the ones that are used by all public authorities, and we have this problem 28 times with 28 members. So as I said, remains on a very basis. At the same time, our colleagues in DG GROW, who are in charge of the standard forms, are working on a revamp of the standard forms. It will still take time until they are. They had a reform of the standard forms to bring them in line with the legislative changes of the public procurement directives that came into force already in October last year, I think. That they want to go a little bit further to get more information and also include a question about green procurement. But they already saw that when doing the revamping for the 2015 GIS, member states were pretty reluctant to take up a lot of reporting obligations. So to be honest, we don't expect that we can go very much into depth in the standard forms. I think we can hope to have a question of, did you include some green criteria in the tender documents, or did you include them in the technical specifications? That's not really decided yet. We hope that member states would be happy to include that, so we will get at least some information which we could then combine with the CPV codes to see, okay, did they include something green for product groups which are relevant for green public procurement. I think with this, I'm at the end. We asked the members of the Green Public Procurement Advisory Group to provide some feedback by the 20th of May. If you are interested, as I said, in the procurement forum, the document is available with some specific questions. I would be happy if you get your feedback to us, and also hopefully possibly in line with the 20th of May deadline, because we want to move on quite quickly afterwards and to get a recommendation out for the summer break, which might be visit or shortly after the summer break. I think I'm at the end now. I'm looking forward to hear the other presentations, but if you have immediate questions, please go ahead. Thanks.
Great to hear from us, European level perspective on the activities and the drive towards improving on this pretty crucial area of SPP. So far, no questions from the audience as yet. So something may come along towards the end when we have the question session after the other presentations. In the meantime, I guess I will pass on any web links from yourself, Robert, to the attendees today after the webinar. Anything you want to share in terms of links to more information or how they can get in touch with you, some of the programs you're undertaking.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Great. So I'll just share my screen for a second. And next up we have Els Verwimp from Flanders, and she'll be discussing the Flanders monitoring scheme. So I'm just going to pass the presenter role to Els, and she should hopefully be able to share her screen with everyone. You presenter. Perfect.
Okay, everyone can hear me right now. I'm from the Flemish government. As Robert has said, we have got a monitoring system of SPP in place in the department where I work. It's the Flemish Department of Environment, Nature and Energy. So, we are a department of 640 people spread over 12 divisions and 10 locations. Our department is very dispersed. Everyone within our department is a potential procurer. This makes both communication on SPP as monitoring of it very difficult. Luckily, a lot of our people use the framework agreements, both framework agreements closed by our own department, but also framework agreements closed by another agency within the Flemish government, which is in cooperation with us to make their framework contracts more sustainable. A lot of our orders are very small. We have 4% of procurement under 8,500 euros. And that's 8 billion euros we spent on procurement each year. So you can compare it to your own organization and get an idea how we are placed next to yours. What are we monitoring? Because as I've said, it's hard because everyone is a procurer, but our government has decided already in 2008 that it wanted to go for 100% of SPP by 2020. Further, our department had an ISO 14001 certificate. Because of that, we had set out 2 intermediate goals. So last year we had to reach 5% of SPP. And we sorted for those product groups for which minimum criteria are available. You see the product groups over there. After the presentation, I'll get the minimum criteria to you as information, so you can have a look at what we're using at this moment. Now, if you want to know how this system works, or I think you want to know, we have first a system, an easy one, asking our procurers that use the minimum criteria. It was in place in 2013 and 2014, as it didn't get us useful data. On the hand, because the descriptions given by the procurers weren't very good. And on the other hand, we saw they also filled out yes for those product groups for which no criteria were in place. So we knew that was an impossible choice. We developed a new system, is in place since last year, and we have got the first results ready for you now. This slide gives you an overview of the old and new system. I'll be quick about it, but why I did add this one. In my opinion, there is no one good way to monitor SPP. You should always think, why do you want to monitor and what do you want to monitor? So that's what I'm presenting as one example of how you can do it, but you should always look at why and what. But I was going to talk to you about our system. In our department, it's mandatory to report on SPP, the use of the SPP criteria. For orders over 8,500 euros, we made a digital form to do that. For the data collected in that form is afterwards inputted in our accounting system. The procurers have to fill out the form before they close the contract. It's part of the approval file, so I would have that form in the approval file. They won't get any approval to close the contract and they won't get any money. It's a clear message to our procurers. What I find in the form, a lot of accounting information, but specifically for procurement, we'll ask them 3 very simple questions. The first one is, what type of expenditure are you reporting on? Because not everything within our department is procurement. For instance, we've got a lot of subsidies as well. Fill out procurement, you get 2 extra questions. One is which product group, the other one that you use the criteria. How that looks like. Like this is the part in the procurement form on SPP. And only those 2 fields are in the accounting system. we didn't have the possibility to the 3 questions separately into the accounting system as it's used in the Flemish government, but we'll found a workaround in the project code. So you see how we get from 3 questions to the project code. We used the letters and numbers in the project code to get those questions online. That's actually the 3 questions, only questions we'll ask. And the results we get from that were very nice. As you can see, we had in 2015 72% of SPP. Our goal was 25%. We really overshot that goal. It probably wasn't a very good goal. I know by now. That was results, but of course it's important to go from the results to actions. So first of all, we took a look at our overall view. Notice 2 things. First of all, there are only 40% of product groups for which we have criteria, and 67% of those product groups were procurement for study research. So it is a very important product group for us, and we should think further on how to make it even more sustainable. And with 6% of product groups for which we don't have any criteria, it was also important to take a look at the division between those product groups. And saw over 60% of those were ICT services and software. This gives us very important information to work further in the future on criteria development. Now, criteria, that was an overall view, but we also should have a look at the product groups by themselves, because there are a lot of differences between those product groups. And also for the different product groups, we had 3 different kind of actions which we outlined based on the reporting. So, use SPP and framework contracts. As a view, all the product groups for which we partly use framework contracts, so you'll see those framework contracts really are important to us. But if we take a look, for furniture, imaging, equipment, and textile and clothing, something goes wrong. So we use the SPP criteria on. The also is monitoring contract level, because I had to do a really long exercise to get how much percentage of our procurement on framework contracts was sustainable, as we don't have got an automated monitoring. So those are the 2 points of actions we're working on at the moment. As said, most framework contracts were done by another agency, but we're cooperating with them. So we use our influence to make their contracts more sustainable. We have outlined was simply talk to the procurers. The more you do that, the more you can understand how things are in your organization and take action. There are 4 important product groups for which we should talk to our procurers. First, it was on the use of SPP criteria. These are the contracts where we don't have any framework contracts and the criteria weren't used sufficiently. Like furniture, we have got a framework contract, but it didn't have the SPP criteria in it yet. So we should talk to our procurer as soon as the contract is renewed and is sustainable. That's a third type of action outlined. We saw a lot of errors in the reporting. On hand, we had errors in case where the form wasn't used to report. As you remember, the digital form is only in cases where you spend more than 8,500 euros. If it's less than 8,500 euros, it's just a very simple handwritten reporting, and apparently it goes in there because over 80% of the reported project codes were wrong. What did we do? We talked to the procurers in December of 2015, and in the long term, as from next year, we will have a digitalized version of that form as well, so it will be better. Also saw results from the talk to our procurers. On the right side, you'll see the situations where the form was used. Still 50% of the reported project codes was wrong, but we did see where we went wrong. For some product groups, the description wasn't really clear to the procurers yet. So then we talked to procurers, figured out how should we change the description. We have done that in November of 2015, and first results of that are positive. So the improvement of reporting is all important as well. Now, I've seen a lot of actions that I have proposed from our reporting, but it's important to make prioritization as well. Of course, my time and that of my colleagues is limited. So I should take also a look at the division between your product groups, which one is most important to you. It's a huge difference. In conclusion, SPP monitoring is very important. On the one hand, to check whether we have reached our goal, what are the results, but also to improve the system as a whole. Improve the monitoring itself, but also improve knowledge and availability of SPP criteria and actually knowledge of the whole concept of SPP by the procurers. On this exercise within our department, but it was a pilot to upscale it to the Flemish government as a whole. Hopefully, we will succeed by 2017 to do that. And then we'll check if the Flemish government reaches its goal by 2020. Another important conclusion which I wanted to make was every system has its downsides. You should think about why and what you want to monitor before you set a system in place. Think what do I need? That will give you probably the best results. That from my side. These are my contact details. I'll give you enough information after the presentation, but all your questions are welcome today afterwards, but also you can contact me by email. And that was it from my side. So I can take over the screening, or should I do something?
Great, thanks, Els. Yeah, I can take back the screen, that's fine. Thank you much, Els. That was a great presentation. We still have a little bit of time, so does anybody have any questions that would like to ask in the next few minutes before we move on to the next presentation? If you do, just send me a quick message. Okay, I do have one here. Okay, so I have a question from Maria Garcia, and she said, I would like to know who at what level of the government approved the initiative for monitoring SPP procurement into the government. Did you have political support, Els?
Yeah, it was within our department. It was approved by our board of directors, so at high level, and they immediately decided on making it mandatory. That's interesting. And right now, from last year, there's a decision of the Flemish government as a whole. Starts with this monitoring on a Flemish level as well. And that was decided by the government. Such the support on the high level.
And do you think important aspect of implementing any system?
Yeah, it is important because those are the only ones who can make it mandatory. And make it mandatory again is important to have got complete data. Otherwise, you probably will only get the reporting of those procurers who already find SPP very important. I don't need further questions, and I have talked too quickly.
So there are no further questions. So I just go back now, Els, and we move on to the next presenter, who is Patricia. So Patricia, I will change you to presenter now. Patricia, can you hear me? Yes, you now have the presenter rights. If you share your screen, you can do that from the top left of your screen. There'll be a button to do so. Okay, maybe Patrizia is a little bit so far they finished. Okay, while waiting, Els, maybe one quick question for you from me.
Yeah.
So you said there's no one way of monitoring SPP, and you should always look at the why and the what of what you're doing. So if you were to recommend to somebody in another municipality who is getting started from zero in this, would you recommend the first step to be?
What, of course, is what reason do you have to monitor? Are there goals in place? Are you working towards something, or do you just want to have a point where you stand? That's interesting, because if you just want a point to know where you stand, an inquiry might be interesting instead of setting up a complete system. What it can be important if you want an overall view of for all your product groups. So if the procurers consider sustainability criteria, nonetheless what those criteria are, or do you really want to have a clear view of which criteria are used to alter those criteria, for instance, to see if they're strict enough, should be altered, or they're well known enough? So those are important aspects, I think, to think about. It can be interesting if you have got more overall approach working on gut feeling by the procurer to single out best practices. That's a good way to work with a simple yes/no criterion. I hope that was a bit clear. I was not expecting a question.
Sorry there, yes. That's great, thank you. And we also have another question as well from Aya. And she's asking, when you ask for the minimum criteria, do you list those criteria?
Yeah, listed. I have, together with a colleague, we have translated them to English. We'll make them available after the presentation. For our procurers themselves, they will find them on a website stating the minimum criteria, and there's a link within the form. They can click on question marks, and they'll get the links to all the different pages listing the product group minimum criteria. So we use our form as a communication tool, and see that as an interesting way to communicate.
It almost acts as an internal sort of forum or an internal sort of tool to communicate as well.
Also, the question from Aura over there, the criteria don't appear there directly in the form. That's true.
Try again with Patrizia. Patrizia, can you hear me? We are ready to share your screen now. You should be able to do so if you go to the share button at the left, and you should be able to share your screen using that. We have lost Patrizia, so I think what we'll do, Aura, if you're ready, maybe we could move to your presentation and we'll just swap the end around.
I have no problem with
great.
that.
I will just pass you across now, Aura. Technology is a wonderful thing sometimes. You should have presenter rights now, Aura.
Okay, yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, then we will, we move this before. I'm Aurea Day. I work at Eco Institute, which is a based in Spain, and I've been invited to present here. So I thank ICLEI for the opportunity, because we've been working for a few years on setting up monitoring systems in public authorities we work with, and also the commission in 2012 to do a study on how to monitor GPP, not so much sustainable but more green public procurement programs by this initiative, and that led afterwards within the framework of the 10YFP SPP program, the United Nations Consumption and Production 10-year framework programs, the one specifically on sustainable public procurement. We coordinated a working group on how to monitor SPP implementation. So the elements and lessons that we learned from that work, where many governments, national governments, and also local governments participated. Here is where I'll present some of the key elements and recommendations that came from that work. We'll say I already mentioned some of them, so we see that we are on in line, and it's not the research and some examples, but really the general knowledge from those that are really trying to implement monitoring systems. Elsa also mentioned why do we monitor? There's many elements. The first one, of course, is to track policy progress. So if we have sustainable public procurement commitments, still really if we are implementing those policies, if we are achieving results. But then, of course, also to legitimize actions. We may have a policy in place that is not monitored, is not controlled, they don't really know. And then when we try to ask the society, the companies, the citizens to more sustainable consumption and production pattern and do it better, if we don't do it ourselves and don't monitor and we don't show what we are doing, then it's very difficult to legitimize and people or to truly convince other actors to move in that direction. So by monitoring our commitments, we also demonstrate that we really want to walk the talk and show that administration is doing also their own part. Right, compliance. When we monitor and we try to keep each agency accountable for their results, that also helps rights compliance, especially if we publish results internally, showing how different departments are doing, but also externally to society, who is doing better or how are we progressing on that. We keep each one accountable. And so I also mentioned it to see where support is needed, where things are not working, which areas can we improve. And we don't monitor, it's very difficult to see if we're doing anything and where the elements, where is it that it's not working really. To monitor SPP implementation, we will, on the one hand, monitor institutionalization, so a bit the process, how sustainable procurement, the sustainability elements in the procurement processes and decisions are embedded. That means, for example, if SPP is being integrated in procedure regulations, if it's integrated in tools, in procurement software, in financial software, if we are training our procurers, if we have SPP commitments or obligations in the staff reviews, for example, for procurers, if you have those kind of processes internally. So it's not that's very qualitative information that we might think is, well, why do we, this is not showing if we are actually buying more sustainable or not, but it really helps identify all these possible elements where things are not working properly that we can address to achieve better indicators and results. And that key element to monitor, so the output, so the actual procurement. Are we really introducing sustainable criteria in our tendering processes, in our contracts? Are we buying green products or sustainable services? Are we hiring from sheltered companies? Whatever the sustainable procurement objective is, are we really doing it? Is really transforming into procurement? This is more quantitative information on the actual level of sustainable public procurement. It's not the percent that we have from the procurers. If you ask them, oh, introducing sustainable criteria, yeah. Well, are you really in the procurement processes? So both elements are important when we consider to monitoring SPP implementation. And of course, kind of ultimate goal of SPP, which is the outcomes, what benefits are we reducing the impact of our organization? Are we reducing the impact on society? Are we helping transform the market? So kind of the ultimate goals of an SPP policy to really turn to that sustainable consumption and production. So we also monitor those benefits. Even more at the beginning of taking institutionalization, are we doing elements are providing guidelines? Are we providing training, etc.? Then now it's a lot on what are the actual levels of SPP, and also more and more the benefits. Are we really obtaining any benefits by introducing sustainability criteria in our procurement? Is it an effective tool to go towards the overarching sustainability goals? So, we can also monitor the benefits, and we have to consider if to monitor or evaluate the benefits, because it might affect our monitoring system if we need to try on procurement or at different levels. So we need to be aware if we want to monitor that, how this affects in the monitoring system. The TSP working group on monitoring SPP implementations developed recommendations at two levels. One, policy level. As Else also mentioned, it's important to have a framework that allows this monitoring. It's important to have a commitment. In the commitment, it might have some targets and goals that we want to monitor against, that we monitor, that there's a leadership or an organization that has been appointed to conduct this monitoring, that has value or some force the other departments, for example. If we think, is it an initiative that only the environmental department is doing without a real commitment, without no big support, or is it coming from maybe the financial department that has a much stronger impact on procurement and expenditure? Well, we have to depend on all the elements are setting an enabling framework for the monitoring system itself. So there's some recommendation at that level, but in this presentation, I'll focus more on the how to implement the system, the management system monitoring. Kind of look at different elements and provided recommendations for the monitoring system that we have to decide. And we put it as step by step, but some are integrated and it's an iterative process. Else also mentioned that they did one system before, and then they reformulated a bit. So we have to be aware that whatever we do, it's not going to work at the first time. So goal one, establish the foundation. That's basically to have a team of relevant stakeholders. It's important to involve proven staff, to involve finance staff, to involve different actors that are working on procurement, so they can really set up an efficient monitoring system. And also, what are the goals of the monitoring? It can be just to control if we are achieving the goals or not. It can help as a awareness raising, as also Else said. We have a link there to the criteria, so that we use the monitoring also for information purposes. So what is the goal of the monitoring system? Because that will make how we kind of questions we ask, we kind of data gathering we have, etc., etc. And to monitor both, not only the outcomes, so not only the level of SPP, but also more institutional level, if we have the different elements to really embed sustainability in the procurement processes and procedures. Then the key indicators, what do we want to monitor? They, of course, to be linked to the policy that we and our commitments, and also help show progress. For the institutionalization, we would, as I mentioned, we would have more if it has been integrated in the procedures, in tools, in trainings, in review processes, etc. When it comes to outputs, to actual procurement, we can focus, for example, on contracts, tenders. I want to focus on actual products and services purchased. So not so much the tenders, which might lead to a green or a sustainable result, but the actual number of products that we buy. Also, if we are contracting, that might be our main element. If we're contracting for companies, sheltered companies, SMEs, whatever we define as preferred companies. So kind of different elements we can monitor. Indicators, if we have it in number of tenders, if we have it in economic value, also if it's a percentage or absolute terms. If it's percentage over the total that we purchase or for the specific product group. That the indicators will vary a lot. In some countries, we've seen that they only provide the absolute value. So then it is increasing, but then maybe in percentage it's very low. It depends on what do you want to communicate. Try to find a way that it's appropriate, reliable, and representative. Don't start to having to extrapolate and then do a strange calculation so that the data gathering might be simpler. Then in the end, you have a result that it's not really representative of overall. And it's also good if you don't have an overall commitment at policy level, or you have one but it's in a long term, to establish levels along the way, so that you can see if you are reaching that goal. Because if you reach that goal for in 5 years' time, then you will not see the progress. But if you have partial loops, then if it's only at internal level, you can see if you are progressing or not, and that encourages in a way. Find what is sustainable. Why do we consider one tender or one product as green or as socially responsible or not? It is very clear what we define. Sometimes can be left open. We monitor the whole procurement and we ask if environmental or social criteria has been included. We may not have criteria for each specific group, so possibility, but that leads to a very weak evaluation and open to each procurer, whatever they consider, if it's green or not green. So it's better if you have definitions that I restrict to the product groups or the environmental or social criteria that you monitor. Some be based on a single attribute, if it's recycled or not, if it's energy efficient or not, or you might refer to a label, if it's Energy Star or if it's EPIT or whatever label you have. If it's for preferred companies, you might also have to define what is a preferred company. So if it's a micro, small, medium-sized company, sheltered company, depending on the country you live in, it has different possibilities. It's a company with an environmental management system or corporate social responsibility system in place. That will depend, but you have to kind of provide a clear definition on that. Have to find a balance between how easy it is to track the information and if you promote not any improvement. You go for multiple criteria, like the Commission did. Do you comply with the green core criteria? Well, the criteria, there were many different criteria. So you might not comply with all of them. We might comply with a few of them. This makes data tracking very difficult unless you have 2 or 3 key criteria that it may be easier. But so you have to find a balance of how sustainable is it, just one criteria, or it's multiple, how many it's multiple, so that it's easy to track, but you don't hinder progress in SPP implementation. So if for computers you only focus on efficiency, well, I think, if I put Energy Star, then I'm already okay. I'm already doing green procurement. But you forget about radiations, you forget about noise, you forget about other emissions. So you have to find this balance that the monitoring doesn't hinder implement or going beyond when it's in terms of GPSPP implementation. So as you have a automatic system that tracks multiple criteria, or do track this information at the moment that the tender is being produced, or as you do an evaluation through sampling tenders and analyzing a sample of tenders, multiple criteria make it a bit more difficult to track information that is for a couple of criteria. For example, in what they have in their electronic procurement platform, when they write specifications, they can go to the green specifications, they get kind of the list of criteria and they can select it and copy them in the specifications. So then it's kind of easy to track which criteria, if it's multiple, they are introducing. In some places, it's a bit more complicated. So it's really important to know how to define and to find the balance. It's a tricky part. The same with indicators. We mentioned if you want to monitor the percentage of tenders, the sustainability criteria. Well, do we focus on all the product groups or only certain product groups? Do we focus on every expenditure or only above certain thresholds? If we use the electronic platform from the Commission, then it will be the ones above the European thresholds, which are like the big contracts. We are losing a lot of information below. In other places, in one country, I don't remember now, I was reviewing these days, they track for those between thresholds, so below the European, because they use a different system for that, and above the direct purchases, because for that they don't use also the electronic procurement process. So they track that. So you also have to be aware. Also, if you are monitoring products or companies, it is direct contract. You are monitoring for other companies. Do you want to monitor direct purchases to shelter companies, or also those purchases from subcontracting? So in a construction, if they are subcontracting shelter companies, that make it more difficult to track the information. It's not you directly contracting from them. So to be aware on as well. An indicator and definition of sustainable, which is complicated. Then the key element is with data tracking and reporting. How do we manage to compile information from all the relevant purchasers that are monitoring? So it's very important to conduct a preliminary analysis of what systems and softwares are already in place, because we might want to modify some of those before setting up a general questionnaire, for example. And also prioritize the integration in electronic tools, platforms, try to make it compulsory to provide the data, like else mentioned, and also to make it automatic to gather all this information. I mentioned that now that all governments have to have electronic procurement systems by 2018, this is a good way of how do we manage to integrate within those platforms information that can help us monitor SPP implementation. Many things, and it really depends on what you have and your indicators. For example, in Estonia, as I mentioned, a procurement platform, because they develop the tenders also within the tool, they can include and have information on whether sustainability criteria have been included when drafting the tenders. In Switzerland or in Flanders, as Els was mentioning, they provide that information before they publish the awarding of the contract, so you make it compulsory to provide the information. In Argentina, for example, they use, as mentioned, the project code. They don't use the CPVs. They have a different coding, and within those codes, they mark if it's green or a social or not. So it's linked to the budget control and also the financial system, and then also for the procurement system. So when they introduce the information there, they already are tracking if they are buying or not green products or sustainable products. In Korea, they have a central purchasing that has an electronic platform. So they mark there the contracts and the products that are green. And for contracts that are outside those framework agreements, they have another system. But they've designed both electronic systems so that they are integrated and the information from one is transferred to the other, so that all the data can be treated at the same time and automatically. So another thing to consider. In Ottawa or in Barcelona, they have it in place in Barcelona, they are seeing how they can introduce those elements within their subsystems. India, they monitor if they are buying from shared companies. So what they have, instead of controlling the contracts, they just have a tick box in their vendors registry so know how much they spend with different vendors, and then which of those are sheltered. So they can have the indicator very easily when you monitor company and not so much the product. And also, and you may want also to see which other registries are in place. For example, in Catalonia, for sheltered companies, the government, the compulsory for the sheltered governments to be registered in a different and each year they have to provide some basic data on their volume of benefits, well, the from general public and public administration. So for them, it's very easy from the system, not linked so much with the procurement, to know how much is being purchased to shelter companies in Catalonia as a whole. So there might be already systems in place that we can use to monitor our SPP indicators. Then important to pilot the systems to see if it's really clear, as Else also mentioned, that the procurers weren't clear about the definitions. Well, it's good if you pilot it in advance, if you provide clear instructions, or if you integrate it in other systems, management systems, for example. That will help with them communicate results. We've also seen many governments one monitors, they publish results, some of them as a general, some of them by department. This is also a good way to kind of encourage those performing a bit less and to kind of move forward. And also not report only on results, but also on good practices or good examples how some are getting good results. So that also helps. Not only am I doing well or not, but also, oh, okay, I could learn from these people because they are doing this in an interesting way. Quickly, as also Elsa mentioned, there's no perfect or universal system that will apply to everybody and everybody will work. It really depends on what are your policies, what are objectives of the monitoring system, and also which existing tools are in place or you are planning on having in place. Most of this institutionalization outputs. In institutionalization, it helps, as Elsa mentioned, to talk to the procurers, to talk to different people, to really know better, and that's a double-way communication. So you get information from them, but you also provide some advising on them. So really try to have both, and for each of them, you might need different training systems. So in one can be a questionnaire or interviews, in the other one is going to be through the systems, financial system, procurement systems, maybe also a questionnaire or a form that you have online, but to cover both aspects. And mention integrating existing systems, even if it means that you have to monitor or to modify them, and all the relevant staff, and also at management level, as Elsa mentioned, the importance of having the support from the top manager so that it's either more effective and it's widely implemented. And it's not too voluntary, and we from the different involved parties. And create some resources. That's the guide mentioned in 2013. It's focusing on green public procurement, and it covers also a bit of monitoring impacts or outcomes, the benefits. It has more information on the pros and cons of monitoring products versus monitoring pairs, and it has also pros and cons on the different data gathering information. Is it better to have a questionnaire, or is it better to ask vendors to provide detailed data at the end of each year on how much green products they supply to you? Well, everything has a pro and a con, so there's some information on that. And the monitoring sustainable public procurement implementation, recommendations and case studies that I presented some of the results here today. In both of them, you have extensive case studies. In the first one from Chile, France, South Korea, UK, and the US Department of Energy. On the other one, you have from Ottawa, South Australia, Japan, Thailand, Estonia, Switzerland, the US government, the federal government as a whole, not the only energy department, and India. And also smaller cases throughout the two documents, so that it also shows how others have been dealing with the different issues that I presented here. Contact details, if you have any questions or want more information. Also, within the 10 SPP program, there should be a space of the monitoring SPP implementation working group, which is still kind of in discussion. But if you have more information on that, please don't hesitate to contact me, and I welcome any question you may have. Thanks.
That was a great overview there of the key success factors and some of the challenges throughout the whole process for implementing monitoring systems. So that was fantastic. And I guess just to let everyone know, I will share the resources after the webinar in terms of links to some of the documents there that Aura's presented, and also if the presenters don't mind, I'll be able to try to share the slides as well with everyone afterwards too. Okay, I think we have Patrizia ready to go, so I will pass our presenters' rights, and we will have a chance to ask you some questions at the end.
Sure.
So I'm just going to pass across now to Patrizia. I should do a very special thank you to Aura. She's coming to us today from Quebec, so she got up at the crack of dawn this morning to present. So thank you, Aura.
No problem.
Okay, Patrizia, I have passed across to you now, so you should be able to share your screen, hopefully. Okay, Patrizia. Can you hear me? Okay, I'll have some success here with Patrizia, unfortunately. Okay, just to see if Patrizia can get connected. Does anyone have any questions for Aura in the meantime? Just feel free to send them across to me. One from myself, and this one could relate to Els as well. We've had discussions here at ICLEI about this too, is in the sense that a procurement monitoring system, I guess it's only really as good as the users are trained to use it, and then they have sort of buy-in to use it. So do you have any sort of recommendations or any success stories that you know of where you've an organization has been able to really get the users involved and get them operating the system the way it should be used?
From the examples we've analyzed, it some time. So, of course, there always some wrong coding of information, and you have to go over and provide clear instructions on how to introduce the information, what is really relevant or not. And I think it's also important if you have a definition of what is sustainable. For example, they mentioned that before they had just a question, did you introduce our green criteria, green considerations? And for most of them, just the fact of publishing the tenders through the electronic platform where there was less paper, they were considering this that they were introducing some green element in the tendering process. And so they really saw the importance of not having this general question, but to link a proper definition of what is sustainable or what is green. By providing the criteria, either by providing a link or a reference to the document with those criteria are included. So, of course, time, training, clearance, and a good definition of what is sustainable or what you want exactly to be considered there. It's important to ensure the good results, but it takes a bit of time.
Thanks. We also have another question here from one of our participants. So in terms of monitoring framework contracts, by long-term contracts, the benefits are mainly depending on the success of the service. Monitoring of frameworks only makes sense at the end of the contractual period. How is the situation within the frameworks?
I think it really depends on the framework agreement. For example, the Catalan government, they have framework agreements for paper, for cleaning services, etc. So for paper, you already have the product selected, so you don't kind of have a problem there. You already know which. And what is important is how many buy from those framework agreements afterwards, how many are selecting. And what they are doing now, the government, because they have framework agreements for the whole region of Catalonia, so any public authority, local, regional, can buy from those framework agreements signed by the Catalan government. But within the government, what they are doing in the recent times is that they do the framework agreement, and then they do contracts from those framework agreements aggregated for the whole government. So then it's also easy to that. And what they do is all the environmental criteria that they've set in the framework, the points that they've given to the different companies that have been awarded or selected in the framework agreement, they are translated or put also in the derivative contracts. They read both at the same time, so that you really know that the deal from the framework has also included the environmental criteria. Of course, it is a problem when you have a big one and each one can do own contracts from those frameworks. Then you really need to that information. It's not enough having the framework agreement introduce some environmental or social criteria unless they are compulsory.
Thank you. We have another question from David Brassfield. The question, is it green will always be challenging? A better question should be, how green is it? So the question to all the presenters is if they expect a shift towards monitoring climate, environment and social footprints, and they've just the yes or no answers. So the presenters have more of a sort of detailed, as opposed to just yes or no, is it green?
Yeah, of course, it will. I would say it depends also on your legal framework. How much can you take into consideration the footprints? This is one limiting factor. If you at the moment it's not so extended, or not so sure if you can consider, because you would need to have, it's like for eco labels. Oh.
We might have to see it here, but to just finish off out here.
So you would need a system that shows that all the footprints are calculated on the same basis and using the same. So I think we are still far away from that as a general in market and in procurement processes. So for the moment, we would still need some criteria. And also, sometimes having the footprint doesn't say if it's green or if you compare all very bad offers. You may have one that is better than the other one, but that doesn't mean that they reach the limit of what is okay as green. So you would still need to put a baseline there to see, okay, it's a product or not. So you still need some kind of baseline. I say the market is not there yet, and in procurement terms, I think we are still not there. At least from what we know in Europe and in Spain. Maybe else has a different opinion.
Yes, anything you can like to that?
Yeah, I don't know the last part of the question.
Hello? Hi, I can't quite hear you. If you muted yourself. Anybody can hear else, fortunately, at the moment. Robert, anything you'd like to add to the discussion?
Must bear in mind at the moment, and unfortunately, except from some very small pots in the world, we know very little about green public procurement. Moving from knowing nothing to checking green criteria is already a huge step, and would be a huge success and would help us to design our policies in a better way. Only the question to include some green criteria would give us some knowledge, but it's a lot of difficulties and interpretation problems, as Aure has highlighted. So I would recommend in general a modest approach and try to see, okay, did you include the following criteria on energy efficiency, on hazardous substances, and so on and so forth. And once this gets better embedded in overall monitoring systems, we achieved quite a lot, and then we can take it from there. But we are pretty far away from achieving that at the moment, so already this would be quite a success.
I think Patricia is possibly again, so we're going to try one more time.
Yes.
Patricia, can you hear me? Great.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you hear me?
It's very quiet, Patricia. Do you have a volume control on your microphone you could increase?
So you hear me?
It's very faint, but maybe you could speak a little louder or try to adjust the microphone level.
Ok. Troppo alto. Okay now?
It's very quiet, Patricia. On your audio, on your settings, there's a tab at the top of the screen called Communicate. And you can increase your microphone level using the audio action button.
Sorry, could you repeat? Because we have two PC connected, so there was a little bit.
Right, Patricia, are you able to adjust your microphone?
Yes, but do we have to lower the level of the microphone?
I think you got quieter. If you go to the screen, there's a Communicate tab, and there's a button called Audio Connection. I'm able to increase the microphone level.
No, on the top, on the right side of the PC.
Okay, we can't hear you, I'm afraid. It's very faint. Okay, we're going to have to. I'm afraid, Patricia, unless you can the way to adjust your microphone. Unfortunately,
I don't know. I don't know what is the problem with the.
Oh, here we go. That's wherever you're there, it's a little bit better. So if you can try to keep making it better, that would be good.
Can we go? Or...
It's too quiet, I'm afraid, Patricia. It's really hard to hear you. I speak again.
I don't know what is the problem with the microphone because we have. I don't know.
Okay, let's keep trying. If you, I've turned the volume up on my screen, my computer, and it's not so bad. Oh, can you share your screen? If you go share at the top left.
Che devo fare? Condividere le slide. Dopo me le video. Not to share screen.
That's happening. Make your screen, Patricia, so that's a good start. If you can make your PowerPoint presentation into full presentation mode, then we'll be able to see the slides a bit bigger.
Yeah,
That's it.
okay.
Okay, and if you could speak as loud as you can, that would be great.
Okay. So the technical problem. We are at the office or at the GPP coordination office of the Metropolitan City, and we are presenting the new GPP monitoring system. The Metropolitan City is a local government authority that was established in 2015 and replaced the former province of Rome. Is one of the biggest metropolitan area in Italy. And the local strategy on GPP began in 2000 when a first green purchasing action plan was approved, and together with the action plan, also a greener events guide was defined in order to reduce environmental impact of conferences and seminars. In 2009, an internal directive on green purchasing was approved concerning different product categories: furniture, paper, prints, multifunction printers. And in 2009, also a green purchasing workgroup was created in order to promote the adoption of the directive. The Metropolitan City Action Plan for Green Purchasing sets the objectives and the ecological criteria for some goods and services. Also defines the organizational structure for plans, execution, and diffusion, and defines the monitoring process. The monitoring plan that we currently use in our departments foresee is based on sheets for the achievement of GPP objectives approved by the National Green Purchasing Workgroup. That were transformed into spreadsheets for convenience of calculation. And the GPP Coordination Office supports, supported by the working group, each year elaborates reports starting from the received sheets and transmits the results through different communication channels. So website, workshops, internal meetings. Data are filled out by each service department for each green purchase of goods and services, are sent to the GPP Coordination Office within 1 month following the awarding of the contract. The GPP Coordination Office elaborates GPP annual reports. You can see here the results of the monitoring process from 2009 till 2014, and the percentage of green purchase increased all over the period till 98% in 2014. Also a CO2 saving equal to 749 tons. This year, a new version of the monitoring plan and monitoring process was approved and the new version, the updated version, was approved in order to improve some wake points of the previous version. Main wake points were the timing, the completeness of data, and environmental requirements of purchase, because departments often do not send to the GPP coordination office all the technical documentation for check. So it was approved in 2014, and this plan there was also the creation of a reserved area dedicated to GPP in information systems for decrees for the official acts of the metropolitan city. There was also the approval in 2015 of the national regulation on environmental matter to promote green economy measures and reduce the overuse of natural resources. And national regulation compels public administration to introduce the minimal environmental area approved by the Environmental Ministry in public procurement documents. For the implementation of the new monitoring system, the metropolitan city has integrated the monitoring system in the digital system that gathers all the degrees, so all the official acts of the body. And governments are now compelled to include environmental criteria in this digital system. You can see here the format that each department has to fill out with data related to GPP purchasing. This is the attachment where all categories of products and services are listed. And the new monitoring system, in the new monitoring system, the procedure, the awarding procedure is not concluded if the attachment related to green GPP purchase is not completed. So if the attachment is not completed, the purchasing procedure can't be concluded. Here there is another format of the monitoring system where you can see the general category of products and services, the specific category of product or service. You have to input the quantity related to GPP, the total amount, and also provide description. This is another example of how the system works. The new monitoring system is managed together with the accounts department, who checks all the inputs related to accounting and regulatory issues. The accounts department also carry out a first-level control on the formal accuracy of environmental criteria. The GPP coordination office can check at any time the elaboration of decrees on the digital system. And in order to support of the staff responsible for purchasing and the accounts department, we are organizing training courses on the new function related to GPP monitoring system. To conclude, the new system allows to realize simple check on the input of technical requirements, provide this office with assistance through telephone help desk, an update online library, and also a supporting guide. Monitoring system also gives support on how to check GPP products, especially when there is no official label for this product, and allows also to obtain real-time reports according to several parameters criteria. Okay, finish our presentation.
Okay, thank you, Patricia. I'm glad I got there in the end. That was really worth it. So we have a few questions for you. So the first one is, what's the TE system and General National One of the Anti-Corruption Authority?
What is this? Could you repeat the
Yeah. It is the link between the City Electronic System and General National One of the Anti-Corruption Authority.
Ok, quindi qual è il link tra il sistema GPP e quello nazionale, o di Anti-Corruption Authority? Qual è il legame, se c'è un collegamento? Ma il collegamento in termini, cioè qual è quello? Generale? Collegato ambientale si impone di dare i panni. Ma c'è un collegamento tra il nostro sistema e quello nazionale? No, il nostro sistema sì, Do you mean if you mean the digital information system, there isn't at the moment a link between our digital information system and the national one. So, if you mean the link between the digital system, there isn't at the moment this link.
Okay.
There is just the number of the decree is registered also is registered also in the National Corruption Register, but there is just a check on the corruption issues, but not on the environmental issues. There is just a link with the National Authority on Corruption National Authority, and the check is on corruption issues, but not on environmental criteria. So there is just a link with the anti-corruption system at national level.
Okay, great. And the second question we have is the data provision by the procurers mandatory or voluntary?
It's mandatory. All the system is mandatory. So the purchases, the responsible for purchases can't conclude the awarding procedure without including all the environmental criteria.
Okay, and the contracts that are reported in the system, is it anything above the threshold and also below the threshold?
Do you mean if there is a threshold for the contract?
Yes. So do you is it mandatory for contracts above the EU threshold and also for anything that's under?
No, there's a threshold for the contract. No.
Okay. Okay. And we're about out of time, but maybe one final question. And how do you define a green procurement for your system?
We started from the national procurement GPP criteria and plan, and we try to adapt this national plan to the to needs of our body. So we started from the definition of criteria of national criteria.
Okay, good. And there's also a question of a similar nature for Robert, actually. And it was, how did the surveys define green procurement? The full question, Robert, was EU target of 50% green procurement assumes you have a good indicator or criteria to assess whether a particular procurement is green. How do the surveys define a green procurement?
Can you? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, then said that the core criteria for the GPP product group should be built, which sounds easier said than done because you partly have a lot of criteria, then you have a criteria in that as well, which must not be fulfilled. So for both the surveys, we narrowed down the choice of the requirements that should be fulfilled by the documents. So of course, a pretty complicated choice. It cannot be rather political. If you make it too easy, you might end up in very positive results. So if you feed then to the conclusion that everything is already so good that you don't have to put much more effort into green public procurement. But on the other hand, if you make it too complicated, you might also frustrate people who are doing efforts, maybe not fulfilling the high level of green public procurement, but doing still some. So it's a balance to be struck.
It does seem to be a key thing in many of the presentations. Just a very final thing, do any of other presenters have anything else to add in terms of the sort of definition of a green procurement for a sort of monitoring system?
I always said that when you monitor at kind of level, it's easier to define. The Commission has a very tricky situation because it's in different countries that they are trying to monitor. And just as a different example, where there's not so like if you look at the U.S. Objective, their objective is 95% of contracts have to include green criteria based on if they are energy efficiency, water efficiency, or bio-based, so more general parameters. And in order to select those, the criteria are kind of based, if you want. Most of them, not all of them, but most of them. So if it's recycled content or energy efficient, etc. And what they have to do is because it's 95% of the contracts, and it's very difficult to select all the contracts because they don't have prioritized product groups, but more environmental aspects. Each department has to kind of check their own procurement, and they kind of have to justify which procurement they are analyzing because they don't do the 90% of all the contracts, but all of them do normally a sample every 6 months, I think, or a year, and from the results from them, they extrapolate to the 95 to the total. But they have to justify which they select and what parameters they select so that it makes sense. It's different because they don't prioritize product groups and specific criteria. Just to give a different alternative. For big kind of monitoring systems that includes many different types of agencies or governments that are very big scale.
Okay, great. That's really interesting. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you. Yeah.
Something that, from my experience in defining what is green for our government, I will notice that's a definition at one point in time. Through monitoring, you're going to notice how the market change, but also how the knowledge and intuition of your procurers change. And in that, you will also always have to change your definition, upscaling it ever forward to make everything more greener. So probably there is no one definition for a longer period of time, because you'll always reach 100% and be there and not go further anymore. That's what I want to ask. Ed.
Oh, thank you. I think that's a really good way to actually wrap things up. So thank you to all the presenters for your time today. They were fantastic presentations. And then also a big thank you to everyone who attended and made the webinar what it is, for all your questions. In terms of Procura Plus, the next big event upcoming for us will be the Procura Plus webinar, which will be in Rome this year. It will be on the 13th and 14th of October. So keep your eyes out in the next week or so for some further announcements on that. And that's it from me. So again, thank you very much to everyone, and have a great day. Thank you.
Bye.